Welcome to today's deep dive. I want you to picture this scene with me really quick.
Oh, I love a good scene setting. Let's hear it.
Okay, so you are standing in your kitchen, right? And you're looking at a German Shorthaired Pointer resting by the back door.
A very familiar sight for a lot of people listening, I'm sure.
Right. And it is about an hour after a really intense morning run. She has spent the whole morning swimming. She's sniffed her way across this huge field. Maybe she even worked through some really complex recall drills.
That is a heavy mental and physical workout.
Exactly. And now she is just drinking water. She's lying down, breathing slowly, and her frame is like perfectly adapted to the work she just finished. She is lean.
Which is key.
Yeah.
Lean, not skinny.
Yes, not skinny, and definitely not bulky. And then she just kind of wanders over toward her empty food bowl.
And that right there, that exact moment at the food bowl is ground zero for just a massive amount of conflicting anxiety among owners.
It really is. Because you can have three different people look at that exact same dog and come away with three completely contradictory assessments of her health and her caloric needs.
Oh, absolutely.
Like one person looks at all that insane energy she just burned in the field and assumes, well, she needs a massive pile of food to replace all that.
Right, the refuel the tank mentality.
Yeah. But then another person looks at her lean, athletic build and immediately starts worrying that she's actually undernourished.
Because we are so used to seeing overweight pets.
Totally. And then a third person completely forgets that they've been handing out these high-value training treats all morning long, and they just fail to calculate how those treats factor into her daily metabolic intake.
Yeah, the human instinct is generally to reward effort with food. And, we tend to worry when a dog doesn't look like the heavier, more sedentary pets we see walking around their neighborhoods every day.
Which makes sense emotionally, but it's fundamentally flawed.
It is. We project our own emotional relationship with food onto an animal whose biology basically operates on a completely different set of rules.
Which brings us to the core mission of our deep dive today. We are exploring the fascinating, highly tuned biological system of the athletic dog.
And there is so much to cover here.
So much. We've synthesized a whole stack of research and veterinary insights on canine conditioning to understand one overarching golden rule. And that rule is that a breed like the GSP must be fueled for function, not for fullness.
Fuel for function. I love that phrase.
Okay, let's unpack this. I want you to think of this dog's body like a high-performance vehicle. You don't just dump fuel into the tank indiscriminately.
No, of course not. You'd ruin the engine.
Right. The fuel has to be meticulously calibrated to the specific terrain and the physiological demands of that specific day.
Which means we need to talk about how this vehicle is built in the first place.
Yes. Since we're looking at how to build this machine, we have to start on the assembly line, which means puppyhood.
Oh, puppyhood. Feeding a growing, athletic puppy requires a level of restraint that feels, honestly, almost entirely unnatural to most humans.
It really does. Because the prevailing thought is usually, hey, this dog is going to be an incredible athlete. Let's build her up fast. Let's maximize her growth.
Right, like bigger is better. But accelerating growth is actually one of the most destructive things you can do to a large breed puppy.
Let's look at the underlying mechanics of that, because on the surface, it sounds incredibly counterintuitive.
It does sound backward until you look at the biology.
Yeah, because we are so conditioned by pet food marketing to view a chunky, roly-poly puppy as the ultimate picture of health. It feels fundamentally wrong to hold back food from an animal that's clearly growing and expending so much energy.
It feels wrong emotionally, for sure, but biologically it is essential. You have to remember that a puppy's skeleton isn't fully formed yet.
Right, the bones are still soft.
Exactly. The long bones in their legs grow from these soft areas of cartilage called growth plates. And when you overfeed a puppy, you are not making those bones grow longer or stronger any faster.
You're just adding weight.
You are simply packing heavy, dense tissue onto soft, vulnerable cartilage.
Wow. So it's literally a mechanical stress issue. You are essentially overloading the chassis before the frame is fully bolted together.
That is the perfect way to visualize it. And that mechanical stress compounds every single day.
So it's not an overnight injury.
No, it's microscopic damage done to those growth plates by carrying excess weight at, say, 6 months old. And that is the exact mechanism that triggers severe osteoarthritis, hip dysplasia, and cruciate ligament tears years down the road.
That is wild.
You aren't building an athlete by overfeeding them. You are systematically compromising their joints.
Now, I do want to clarify a nuance here, because looking at the sources, The data isn't advocating for severe calorie restriction either.
No, absolutely not. That would be dangerous.
Right, because underfeeding derails the endocrine system, it stunts development, and it compromises the immune system. So the takeaway I'm seeing is really about precision.
Precision is the perfect word for it.
So early restraint is actually a long-term protective strategy.
Yeah.
You want the growth curve to be this slow, steady, shallow incline guided by a veterinarian who is assessing the actual body condition rather than an owner just throwing a party every time the scale registers a heavier weight.
And honestly, the scale is a terrible metric during puppyhood. A heavy puppy is very often just an overloaded puppy.
That makes total sense.
Okay.
But, okay, once those growth plates close and the skeleton is finally set, the rules of the game shift.
They do.
Dramatically.
Because now the challenge isn't protecting the assembly line anymore. It's monitoring the finished engine. And if the scale isn't the best tool for an adult either, we have to learn how to objectively decode the dashboard of the dog.
And the target for an adult GSP is what we call useful athletic condition. The short coat of this specific breed is a massive advantage here, by the way. Oh, because nothing is hidden by fluff.
Exactly. There is nowhere for excess adipose tissue or fat to hide.
It really is a transparent dashboard. You can read the gauges instantly if you know what you're actually looking for.
So what are we looking for, ideally?
Well, according to the standards, you want a visible waist when you view the dog from above. And from the side, you want to see a clear upward tuck in the abdomen.
Right, that classic deep chest tapering up.
Exactly. And you should be able to feel the ribs easily under a flat layer of muscle, but you shouldn't have to apply hard pressure to find them.
That's the sweet spot. If the ribs are sharp and protruding without any muscle cover, the dog lacks the necessary reserves for endurance work. They will crash.
But on the flip side,
Conversely, if you have to press through a layer of squishy padding just to find the ribs, the dog is carrying non-functional weight. And that extra weight is only going to overheat them and exhaust them in the field.
but the real complication here isn't visual, is it? It's behavioral.
Oh man, the behavioral side is where it all falls apart.
The illusion of appetite. This is where owners get completely tripped up. Because just because a GSP is acting like she is starving, like frantically pacing around the food bowl, that does not actually mean she is physiologically in a caloric deficit.
What's fascinating here is how behavioral loops essentially hijack the biological system. Look, hunger is a biological drive, right? But begging is a learned behavioral loop.
They train us.
They really do. Dogs are incredibly associative learners. If they whine at the bowl on a random Tuesday and you give them even just the handful of kibbles to quiet them down, you have just hardwired a neurological pathway.
You've taught them the trick.
Exactly. They learn that performing the starving dog routine dispenses food. And the crazy thing is, boredom, habit, and anxiety perfectly mimic hunger in a dog.
So it's essentially intermittent reinforcement. We turn our kitchens into slot machines, the dog pulls the lever by whining, and sometimes the jackpot of calories just falls out.
That is a brilliant way to put it.
But that doesn't mean the dog's internal fuel sensor is actually flashing empty. It just means they know how to play the game.
Which requires the owner to step up and act as the objective, rational brain for the dog. You really have to ignore the theatrical performance and audit their actual daily intake.
Okay, let's do that audit, because this gets into the metabolic reality of what these dogs are actually consuming during the day.
The hidden calories.
Yes. Anyone who has trained a high-drive working dog knows that training treats aren't just cute little extras. They are vital behavioral tools for recall, leash manners, crate training, all of it.
And this is where owners severely miscalculate the daily caloric load. We tend to view treats as somehow existing outside the realm of the dog's actual diet.
Right, like they don't count. But if we look at the macronutrient breakdown, high-value training treats are usually incredibly dense in fats and proteins.
They have to be to keep the dog's attention.
Exactly. And a dog working in the field utilizes fat for oxidative phosphorylation. I mean, it's their primary energy source for endurance. But if you spend a rainy Tuesday doing indoor crate training, handing out all this dense fat and protein, and then you stack all of that on top of a completely full daily ration of standard carbohydrate-heavy kibble, you are creating a massive caloric surplus.
You are just overloading the system at that point. A working breed's diet needs to be dynamic. The bowl has to listen to the calendar.
What do you mean by listening to the calendar?
Well, a heavy hunting day in cold weather or a serious 2-hour swimming session demands a drastically different caloric replacement than a lazy day spent mostly sleeping on the couch.
See, here's where it gets really interesting, but also where I struggle with the practicality of it. If an owner is supposed to dynamically adjust meals based on activity, how do they do that without constantly overhauling their diet and destroying the dog's GI tract?
That's the million-dollar question.
Because the canine microbiome doesn't exactly handle wild volume swings well, right?
No, it doesn't. But dynamic fueling is about micro-adjustments. It's not about overhauling the volume by 50% overnight or switching brands. It requires observing the dog's recovery metrics.
So reading the outputs.
Exactly. You titrate the food based on stool quality the next morning, the dog's resting heart rate, and their sustained energy levels. If the stool becomes loose after an intense workday, you might have pushed the volume too high. Or the dog's gut is inflamed from the stress of the work, not necessarily a lack of calories.
That distinction right there between stress, boredom, and actual hunger is so critical.
Yeah.
Like, if a dog is pacing the house on a rest day, the immediate instinct is to just hand them a chew or a stuffed bone to calm them down.
The easy fix.
Right. But that restlessness usually means the dog is lacking a mental or physical outlet. You cannot feed away boredom. You are just dumping unneeded fuel into a car that is idling in the garage.
And processing that heavy macronutrient load requires an immense amount of water, which naturally shifts our focus to the most critical yet somehow most misunderstood element of performance and recovery.
The coolant system. Hydration.
Yes.
The data here exposes a massive blind spot for owners, specifically regarding swimming. I like to call it the paradox of the wet dog.
Oh, this is such a common trap. Owners watch their dog retrieve in a pond for an hour. They're splashing around, visibly soaking wet, and the owner just assumes the dog is perfectly hydrated.
Because there's water everywhere.
Right. But in reality, that dog can emerge from the water in a state of severe physiological dehydration.
Let's explain the mechanics of that, because, it defies logic to look at a soaking wet dog in a lake with water literally dripping from its jowls and think, dehydration danger?
We have to separate ambient water exposure from actual physiological absorption.
Okay.
When a dog is swimming, they are performing intense cardiovascular exercise. Their muscles are generating immense internal heat. And to cool down, the dog pants, which rapidly evaporates moisture from their respiratory tract.
So they are losing water constantly, even in the lake.
Constantly. The occasional splash of lake water hitting the back of their throat does not equal the deliberate, sustained ingestion of clean water that is necessary to maintain blood plasma volume and hydrate muscle tissue.
So the coolant is leaking out faster than it's being replaced, even though the dog is submerged in a body of water.
Exactly.
That means owners have to actively offer clean, fresh water during and after aquatic work. You have to watch for red flags, right?
Yeah.
Like a panting rhythm that just refuses to settle, or dry gums, or unusual fatigue.
And paying close attention to the digestive system post-exercise like that leads us to the most urgent, catastrophic mechanical failure a deep-chested dog can ever experience.
Gastric dilatation, volvulus.
Yeah.
Bloat.
Yes.
The literature we reviewed is very careful to frame this not as a scare tactic, but as a mandatory biological reality of owning this specific anatomical build. We aren't talking about a mild stomachache here.
Not at all.
We are talking about a rapidly fatal physics problem.
Because of the deep, narrow chest cavity of a GSP, their stomach is essentially suspended inside them like a pendulum. And if that stomach becomes distended with gas, fluid, or food, and the dog moves dynamically like running, jumping, or even just rolling over,
That pendulum can swing.
it swings and it physically twists on its axis.
Wait, it literally folds over on itself?
It completely flips, and when it does that, it seals both the entrance from the esophagus and the exit to the intestines.
So it's totally locked down.
The gas inside ferments and expands rapidly, but more critically, this twisting pinches off the caudal vena cava, which is the major blood vessel returning blood to the heart.
Oh, wow.
Tissue begins to undergo necrosis, or cell death, within minutes.
It is a complete mechanical lockdown. This is why the sources stress that it's an absolute drop-everything emergency. You do not wait to see if the dog settles down.
Never.
The symptoms are very specific, too. It's unproductive retching, so the dog is heaving. But nothing comes up because the esophagus is literally sealed shut. The abdomen becomes rigid and visibly swollen. You'll see extreme distress, pacing, heavy drooling, and eventual collapse.
If you observe that combination of symptoms, you bypass the internet, you bypass the wait-and-see approach, and you drive immediately to a surgical veterinary facility. Time is literally the only variable that matters.
It's terrifying, but so important to know. Now, while bloat is this undeniable flashing red light acute emergency, I want to pivot to the chronic everyday issues that plague working dogs. Because this is where well-meaning owners wildly misdiagnose the machine.
Yeah, the instinct to quickly fix a subtle problem often leads owners to bypass logic entirely.
Right.
When a dog experiences a minor change in stool consistency, transient gas, or just a single episode of vomiting, the immediate knee-jerk reaction is almost universally, oh, it must be the kibble. I need to switch brands.
Which completely ignores the biological reality of the dog's environment. The canine GI tract is highly responsive to cortisol.
Extremely responsive.
Travel stress, absorbing the excitement of a hunting trip, drinking water from a strange source with a different mineral profile, or even just scavenging a dead bird in the field, all of these trigger gut inflammation.
We absolutely do.
Changing the food in response to environmental stress is like swapping out your car's entire transmission because it was driving sluggishly, only to find out you just had a flat tire.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, constantly changing a dog's base diet destroys the exact baseline data you need to identify a real problem.
You're muddying the waters.
You introduce so many new variables into the digestive tract that neither you nor your vet can isolate what is actually causing the inflammation.
And we see that exact same flawed logic applied to skin and coat issues too. Because the GSP coat is so short, any localized redness, bump, or dullness is instantly visible. And the immediate assumption is always, it's a food allergy.
True food allergies are actually quite rare in dogs, and they typically present with severe GI distress alongside the skin issues. What is vastly more common for a working breed running through fields and brush.
Environmental allergens, right? Contact dermatitis.
Exactly. Plant pollens, dust mites, flea saliva. These environmental allergens breach the skin barrier and trigger a localized histamine response. It usually presents on the paws, the belly, or the ears.
But the marketing power of the specialty pet food industry somehow convinces owners they need a radical diet change to fix an itchy paw.
The specialty diet market is a complete minefield. The data specifically calls out the risks of these fads. A more complicated feeding routine does not equate to a superior feeding routine.
Right, like raw or homemade diets. They require rigorous formulation by actual veterinary nutritionists to avoid severe mineral deficiencies.
And we really have to talk about the mechanism behind the grain-free trend too, because it is not just a harmless premium upgrade.
No, it's actually dangerous.
The issue with grain-free diets isn't the absence of grains, it is what manufacturers substitute in their place. To bind the kibble together, they rely heavily on pulses.
Like peas, lentils, legumes.
Yes, and those legumes actively interfere with the dog's biology. They can inhibit the absorption or synthesis of taurine, which is an amino acid critical for cardiac muscle contraction.
Which leads directly to dilated cardiomyopathy, or DCM, which is an often fatal enlarging of the heart. You introduce a chemical roadblock into the biological engine just because a marketing label sounded appealing.
It's tragic.
Speaking of chemical roadblocks, there is one major intake valve issue that owners frequently overlook until it's too late, and that's dental health.
Oh, this is huge.
Bad breath in a dog is not just an aesthetic annoyance or normal dog smell. It is a sign of active periodontal disease. A working dog that retrieves needs a pain-free mouth. Tartar buildup and inflamed gums actually allow bacteria to enter the bloodstream, which strains the liver, kidneys, and heart.
Dental care is foundational preventative maintenance. And this ties directly into how we manage the dog as they enter their senior years, which is the long game.
Right.
To avoid those knee-jerk misdiagnoses we talked about, you have to build a long-term data set of what is normal for your specific dog.
Because as the athletic dog ages, the fuel requirements inevitably change. The senior athlete still has the drive, but their cellular metabolism slows down and their overall activity volume naturally drops.
And if you maintain the exact same caloric intake that fueled them at 5 years old, that senior dog will quickly become overweight. But there is a more insidious physiological shift that occurs called sarcopenia.
Age-related muscle wasting.
Exactly. The number on the scale might remain perfectly stable, tricking the owner into thinking the dog's condition is totally fine. But beneath the surface, the dog is quietly losing dense muscle mass and replacing it with lighter adipose tissue, or fat.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener? How does an owner practically manage all of these moving parts? The micro-adjustments, the environmental stressors, the aging process, without driving themselves completely crazy analyzing every single bowel movement.
It's simple, really. By tracking long-term patterns, not daily snapshots, you establish a rock-solid baseline of your dog's normal weight, standard stool quality, average water intake, and baseline energy levels.
So a single loose stool on a Tuesday is data, but it's not an emergency.
Exactly. The baseline makes the severe deviations obvious.
Okay, what are the definitive triggers then? When do you call the vet?
When the pattern breaks drastically, so repeated vomiting over 24 hours, ongoing bloody diarrhea, a sudden and total refusal to eat, unexplained rapid weight loss, or severe lethargy. When you see those, you do not guess, and you do not switch dog foods. You consult a professional.
Right.
You use the pattern data you've gathered to give your vet the clearest possible medical history.
Let's pull all of this together. We have explored the deep biological reality of fueling a high-performance working dog today. We started with the necessary restraint of puppyhood to protect those developing growth plates.
Crucial first step.
Then we decoded the visual and behavioral dashboard of the adult athlete, separating true caloric need from the psychological loop of begging. We broke down the metabolic reality of treats, the physics of bloat, the hydration illusion of the wet dog.
And the danger of boutique diet fads.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It all underscores a fundamental shift in mindset. There is a profound difference between simply exhausting a dog and truly conditioning an athlete.
It requires an owner to transition from being reactive to being deeply proactive and scientifically observant.
It really does. And as we finish up, I want to leave you with a final thought that builds on this entire concept of dynamic, customized fueling. Think about the commercial pet food industry for a second. We all go to the store and we buy these massive bags of kibble.
Yep.
On the back of every single bag, there's a highly standardized, rigid feeding chart. Feed X cups for Y pounds.
The static chart.
Right. But based on everything we just uncovered today, the shifting metabolic demands of cold weather hunting, the caloric density of training sessions, the slowing metabolic rate of senior dogs, those static, one-size-fits-all labels fundamentally clash with the biological reality of a dynamic working animal.
They absolutely do.
It forces you to wonder, are those static feeding charts printed on the back of the bag actually designed to optimize the dog's biological health? Or are they meticulously designed to appeal to the human demand for simplicity and convenience?
That is a very good question to ask yourself.
Something to think about the next time you scoop kibble into the bowl. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. As a quick reminder, the information explored today is for educational purposes. If you ever have concerns about your dog's health, diet, or behavior, your first and best step is always to consult your veterinarian. See you next time.